Climate Summit. President Joe Biden continues his virtual meeting on climate change. What world leaders are saying today. On the border, the Attorney General of Arizona weighs in on the crisis on the U.S. border with Mexico. Surprise visit. The Holy Father celebrates the Feast of St. George with a trip to Rome's poor and homeless. And running for a higher purpose. A bishop's new book and the honest assessment of one's physical fitness and health. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, April 23rd, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Calling climate change an existential threat, President Joe Biden kicked off day 2 of his virtual climate summit. The White House acknowledged that 85% of emissions come from beyond U.S. borders. One well-known multi-billionaire was brought in to pitch his path to cleaner air. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. Today, President Joe Biden started out his climate speech by looking ahead, several months from now, in fact, and once again he doubled down on going green.
President Joe Biden says the world has polluted the air so badly.
Look, every country will need to invest in new clean energy technologies as we work forward and to deal with net zero emissions.
And speaking to an audience of global leaders called the summit
a start of a road that will take us to Glasgow for the UN Climate Change Conference in November, where we're going to make these commitments real.
Also brought in to seal the deal, Microsoft founder and philanthropist Bill Gates.
This is a promising moment.
Speaking at the summit, Gates said he believes a climate disaster can be avoided. And the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, told reporters in the briefing room,
"We have taken steps in just the past few weeks to advance offshore wind proposals, restore balance to management of our public lands and waters, and create jobs, and revitalize land in coal communities."
The president promises jobs and a greener, cleaner future. But it's the eye-popping price tag, the green transition the White House is proposing, that will take some serious convincing.
Unfortunately, for a lot of people, climate change is a kind of thin edge of the wedge as a way of essentially transforming the global economy. In fact, many people on the radical environmentalists admit that.
And while everyone wants a clean environment,
because everyone believes in clean air and clean water, everybody wants to be good stewards of the environment, that can sometimes be used as a disguise for other, I think, more nefarious political ideas.
Also tonight, we're learning that in June, President Joe Biden will make his first overseas trip as president, going to the United Kingdom and Belgium, where he'll attend the G7 and the NATO summits. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Montana's governor has signed a new law that codifies the right to challenge regulations which interfere with religious beliefs. The Alliance for Defending Freedom hails it for providing what it calls a sensible balancing test for religious freedom cases. A hostage situation in Haiti continues. On April 11th, 5 priests, 2 nuns, and 3 lay people were kidnapped en route to a pastor's installation ceremony. One was released earlier this week, and now 3 others are reportedly free. An anti-France gang still demands a $1 million ransom. A Canadian court upholds part of a law in Quebec to ban government employees from wearing religious symbols at work. It retains exemptions for existing employees and members of the provincial parliament. Quebec's auxiliary bishop says the ruling will be appealed. And for more on this story, please visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Japan imposes a coronavirus state of emergency for Tokyo and 3 other areas. It is Japan's 3rd such declaration, described as short and intensive. Japan hosts the Summer Olympics in July, which were postponed due to COVID-19 last year. The government fears the spread of the new variant during the next 2 weeks of national holidays. Pope Francis made a surprise visit to Rome's poor and homeless who received the 2nd dose of the COVID-19 vaccine today. On the occasion of the Holy Father's name day, St. George or Jorge, the Pope greeted the people who were getting the second COVID-19 vaccine dose while they sang him a song of best wishes. He thanked all the volunteers and health workers for their hard work. The Pontifical University of the Holy Cross is hosting an online 2-month seminar on inspiring trust in the Catholic Church. Over 500 people are registered. This is in response to cultural and social changes driven by scandals exposed over the years in the Church and in society. To speak more about this topic is Juan Narbona, professor of digital communications at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. He is also one of the organizers of the seminar. Juan, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us, why is the university holding this seminar now?
Well, we have chosen this topic because in all the organizations, or many organizations, are suffering now a crisis of trust. So, for example, only 45% of the population trust journalists and businessmen, and only 42% of religious leaders are trusted by people, and only politicians scored worse with 41%. So these people and these institutions that have been the backbone of society for centuries, they don't have anymore the trust of people. So there is a problem.
Juan, how do you think institutions can inspire trust or regain trust? What do you think?
Well, that's the question. The trust has three big enemies. So the first one is incoherence. Incoherence to your values, to your mission. The second one is incompetence. So the things that you don't know how to do your job. And the third one is deception. Is the fact that you tell lies. So the first thing to inspire trust again is to fight against these three enemies of trust.
Juan, what would be, say, your message to the faithful who maybe have lost a little trust in the Church?
Well, trust is very easy to lose and very difficult to gain again. So they need to think that the Church is an institution that is vulnerable. Okay, so they have to be patient with the Church, and they have to consider also themselves how they can help the Church, knowing already that it is vulnerable. Okay, so be patient, trying to help, and of course asking God for the Church to be able to inspire again with her message.
Well, Juan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Juan Narbona, professor of digital communications at the Pontifical University of the Holy Cross. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you.
Coming up, Arizona's Attorney General speaks about the situation on the southern border in the state. Plus, history is found at a basilica in Hungary. The governor of Arizona has declared a state of emergency on the border between his state and Mexico, adding the Biden administration is wrong not to call the situation a crisis. Earlier, I spoke with Arizona's Attorney General for an update. Joining us now is Mark Brnovich, Attorney General for the state of Arizona. Mr. Attorney General, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We have a lot to get to, but I want to start off with the situation at your border. Can you give us a sense of what's happening there at the border of Arizona and Mexico? What are you seeing?
Well, if you talk to any of the local sheriffs, if you talk to the ranchers, and I was just down there this week, they will tell you that it's the worst they've ever seen. It truly is a humanitarian crisis, but it's also, quite frankly, a threat to our national security. Us in law enforcement know that there's been a 233% increase in fentanyl seizures just last month. We know that the cartels are making money off every single person that's coming across the border. And so it's truly a crisis and the system is getting overwhelmed. Everything from the nonprofits to the law enforcement agencies.
Wow. And as you know, neither President Biden nor Vice President Harris has actually visited the southern border yet, but the Vice President did say that she will be visiting Mexico and Guatemala to discuss immigration and the root cause. I want to get your take on that, and also the fact that the Biden administration has refused to call the situation at the U.S. southern border a crisis.
Well, first of all, Tracy, the number of migrants we're seeing is 6 times higher than when President Obama called it a crisis. And so, you know, you can call it what you will, but it is a crisis. It's a disaster. And if we're not careful, we are going to end up with a tragedy. And what I mean by that is, you know, there's cartels exploiting folks. They're bringing all sorts of drugs into our country. We know that terrorists have been apprehended. We know that sex offender apprehension is at a 5-year high. So, you know, these aren't just people coming here for work. These are people literally that mean harm to other Americans. And the fact that the Biden administration has decriminalized and incentivized people to come over here, the system is overwhelmed. And just to put it in context, Tracy, this year they're expecting 2 million people to cross our border. Now think about it. That's like the entire state of Nebraska in 1 year coming over. So it's overwhelming, not only law enforcement, it's overwhelming social services. Migrants are being exploited, and it's not right. In the past, Vice President Harris has said you have to see and smell and feel what people are going through. So I urge her, come down here, talk to the ranchers, talk to the people that live on the border, talk to law enforcement, talk to the sheriffs, talk to the mayors. They will tell you that this is a disaster, a crisis, whatever you want to call it, and that we all as Americans are going to end up paying the cost for this.
Yeah, and I also understand that you recently filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security and federal officials for violating the National Environmental Policy Act over, as what you described, destructive immigration policies. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, this is like the third in our series of litigations where we're trying to do everything we can, I can as an attorney general, to protect our border. So this lawsuit basically says that when the Biden administration stopped constructing the wall on day one, and then they rescinded the Remain in Mexico policy. As a result of those policies, more migrants are crossing into our desert, and that is causing destruction in our environment. You know, just last month, there's about 170,000 people that crossed. Now, the average migrant is leaving about 6 to 8 pounds of trash. So literally, you're talking about millions of pounds of trash scattered throughout our desert. So that is having an impact on whether it's fueling wildfires, destroying habitat. You know, it's an eyesore, obviously, but in so many ways, it's damaging our environment. And the left, the environmentalists, say that they care about the environment. They say they care about people being exploited. Then why aren't they doing something? And we all know that when the Biden administration stopped building that wall, that contributed to this crisis, and it contributed to the destruction of our environment.
Yeah, and you know, taking that action that you're doing right on the state level, is that something that other states are considering doing, and are they doing that? What do you know?
Well, I know that other states have been involved in litigation. They're trying to do things, you know, and so I think it's important that we do everything we can. And I'm using every tool in my toolbox. And I think that there are some elected officials that have moved slower, but some aren't moving at all. And, you know, it breaks my heart, because if this was, God forbid, a hurricane in the South or wildfires in California, I guarantee you President Biden or Vice President Harris would be out there holding a press conference, declaring an emergency, getting in the necessary federal resources to try to mitigate the harm and the damage. And yet, when it's happening right here in our state and in other states across this country, they don't seem to care. I genuinely don't understand it. It perplexes me on so many levels. As a former gang prosecutor, former federal prosecutor, I don't understand what they're doing.
Yeah, and we are also still in the middle of a pandemic. I'm sure that COVID is also an issue there at the border with those coming over. What comes next on your part?
Well, we have multiple lawsuits going on. We've been urging the governor to declare an emergency and mobilize the National Guard, so he has done that now. My hope is even our U.S. senators now are talking about this, and you know how important it is to get federal resources. So I do think it's important that other folks are recognizing what is going on and that it's a crisis and a catastrophe. I'm going to continue to do my part, and that's to fight for the rule of law. And one thing I do want to say, Tracy, is that, look, I'm a first-generation American, and I understand maybe more than most folks about how great this country is and how great the system is. But what makes it so great is that the rule of law. It means that no matter who you are, where you come from, if you play by the rules, you have an opportunity to get ahead. And so as the Attorney General, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make sure that we play by the rules, that we protect people that have played by the rules, that we prevent people from being exploited, and we're doing everything we can to stop the cartels from sending drugs into our country and overwhelming the system.
Well, unfortunately, we have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for your time today. And please keep us posted. Mark Brnovich, Attorney General for the state of Arizona. Thank you again. Well, SpaceX has launched its third mission to the International Space Station for NASA.
Mission and liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew 2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again.
The crew launched aboard a recycled Falcon rocket and Dragon capsule. They are set to arrive at the International Space Station tomorrow. The 4 astronauts are from the U.S., Japan, and France. An almost 200-year-old time capsule was found in Hungary's Basilica, the largest Catholic church and the tallest building in the country. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colm Flynn has that story.
A 176-year-old time capsule has been found in the 100-meter-high cross of the Estrogram Basilica in Hungary. The director of the cathedral's treasury, Father Kasabat Torok, says that the Archbishop and chief architect at the time of the basilica's construction placed the capsule there to be a symbol of the basilica's history. The capsule contains 2 documents, one detailing milestones in the construction and the other containing names of clergymen and parishioners from that time. The construction of the basilica took 69 years to complete. It was consecrated with a mass with music by Hungarian composer and pianist Franz Liszt and with Emperor Franz Joseph, the King of Hungary, present. The basilica is also the resting place for Venerable Cardinal József Mindszenty, who opposed both Nazi and communists and died as a hero of the faith. Once the dome renovation is completed this year, a new time capsule created by the Archbishop of Budapest, Cardinal Péter Erdo, will be placed back into the cross to serve as another piece of history for future generations. Colm Flynn, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, Bishop Thomas John Paprocki explores the link between physical and spiritual fitness. Tonight on EWTN News In Depth, an examination of the impact of the coronavirus and how it's impacted the faithful, plus a look at the pandemic from a personal angle.
I'm sorry if I'm getting a little choked up here, but I heard her crying and praying in the room next to me.
EWTN's own Eric Rosales opens up and shares his emotional battle with COVID-19. That's on EWTN News In Depth tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And finally tonight, the leader of a diocese in Illinois has some advice on the healthy steps we can take to help us on our journey of faith. Bishop Thomas John Paprocki from the Diocese of Springfield has written a new book on lessons he learned in his hobby as a distance runner. He's completed several marathons and says running can teach us more about growing as a disciple of Christ. And Bishop Thomas John Paprocki joins us now. He is bishop for the Diocese of Springfield and also author of Running with a Higher Purpose. Your Excellency, welcome back. Great to have you on. I know you're an avid runner. And why do you say that there is a connection between physical well-being and spiritual well-being?
Well, actually, that's an important component of our faith. You know, the ancient Greeks taught that our bodies were like a shell, and when we were done with them, we just sort of cast them off, and we lived as spirits for eternity. The immortal soul is what they focused on. And our Christian belief is in the resurrection of the body. You know, we believe that when we die, there'll be a temporary separation between our bodies and our souls. But when Christ comes again at the second coming, all will be raised up and we'll be given a glorified body like our Lord's. When he rose from the dead, we'll be reunited with our bodies in a glorified form. So I think that says to us that we should have respect for our bodies and we should take care of them.
Absolutely. In what ways can running or jogging help in our faith journey, and how's it helped you?
Well, it's helped me a great deal because I do make this connection between physical fitness and spiritual fitness. For example, when I'm running, I often take with me a little finger rosary. It's just 10 beads on a string and wrap it around my finger, and then I say the rosary while I'm running. And you also will hear from many runners when you talk to them that they find that in order to run a marathon 26.2 miles, you have to have a lot of deep inner resources, spiritual resources. And so if you're going to run that far, you have to have a lot of fortitude and endurance and strength. So I think it helps each other. So when I run, I feel much better. I run in the morning, and that just helps me to feel better for the rest of the day and to think more clearly. And then I think also to be a spiritual person helps you to be able to do that and to have the perseverance and the fortitude to keep on running.
And what practical advice would you give someone who isn't really a runner, but maybe is considering taking it up? I know you didn't really start out as a runner.
Right, I didn't. I started out, what motivated me, and my first step in the book actually is to review your situation. And so I was in high school, and I was thinking about the fact that 3 of my grandparents died when they were in their 50s from heart disease. And I thought, well, that's not a very good gene pool. And if I want to live past 55, I better do some aerobic exercise, either running, biking, or swimming, or some combination of that. So that's what I set out to do. And I just went out and did a mile, and I hated it. And so I just determined I was going to stick with it, though, and did a mile at a time, and eventually graduated to 3 miles. When I was at the major seminary at Mundelein, I'd run around the lake, which is a 3-mile run, and then eventually worked up to doing a marathon some years later. I didn't run my first marathon until I was 43. Wow. So my advice to people who are maybe rather sedentary and have never done too much, I say don't try to do too much too soon. Take it a step at a time and work incrementally, because even with marathon training and the program that I recommend in my book suggests you just increase your mileage gradually week by week over an 18-week training program, and you work your way up to be able to run 26.2 miles.
Wow, and you feel so great when you do it, even just a little bit. I want to talk about the book now, going back to that. What inspired you to write the book, and why do it now?
Well, it's actually my second book. My first book was called Holy Goals for Body and Soul, 8 Steps to Connect Sports with God and Faith. And that was written from the perspective of what's actually my favorite sport, which is hockey. And I'm a goalie, and I'm the holy goalie. And you can see this is the book. That's me actually on the cover of that book, Holy Goals for Body and Soul. And so my publisher, Ave Maria Press, asked me if I would write a book more from the perspective of my other hobby, and that's this one, Running for a Higher Purpose. That's not my picture on there, but we got some runners on the front of this one. And Running for a Higher Purpose, it's actually sort of a how-to book, you know, for those who are thinking about getting into running. If you're not a runner, or if you're a runner, you're thinking about becoming a marathon runner. It actually gives tips on how to do that. I share a lot of the experiences that I've had training and running 24 marathons. So in that sense, I hope it will be a practical help. Also in this book, I weave the spiritual and the physical together. So it's not like one chapter is about physical fitness and the next chapter is about spiritual fitness. They go together very much. And so as I'm talking about training for a marathon, I'll bring in some aspects in there about spiritual life. For example, I throw in a chapter there called Rest and Relax and Refresh. And so I play on a lot of the R words in the book. And so, you know, that's important in our spiritual life as well. You know, we keep holy the Sabbath for us on Sunday to have a day of rest and to go to church and to worship God. And even in the training program, it recommends that there be occasional cutback weeks, as we call it, that you can't push your body too much all the time. You have to let your body rest. You have to sleep. You get sufficient sleep. That's an important part of training. You have to eat properly. And so I have a lot of very practical tips in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're running, you have to watch out for those shin splints, too, so you need to get that rest. And I think this is a great time to talk about this book with the weather getting nicer and people wanting to go outside. And I understand that copies of your book are available from the EWTN Religious Catalog. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, that's yes, it's available from a number of sources. You can get it from the publisher Ave Maria Press at their website, avemariapress.com. I also have a personal website set up using my nickname Holy Goalie, so it's holygoalie.net, and that's easy to remember. Just think of the Holy Goalie in the net. So holygoalie.net, and then at that website, people can get autographed copies.
Oh, that is so great. And thank you so much for joining us and talking about this. We really appreciate it. Bishop Thomas John Paprocki from the Diocese of Springfield. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Welcome. God bless you.
And thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.